Okay. Let's see. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Nantucket's 2016 annual town meeting is now in session. Despite the fact we are still kind of scurrying around doing some last-minute business, I promise to start as close to 9 as possible with the idea that we might actually wrap this meeting up by the end of the day. Okay. Let's see. How's that? Okay. So, despite the fact we're just wrapping up some last minute this and that, I thought we'd start as close to on time as possible with the idea that we might actually finish this meeting by the end of the day. I know it, right? So, now that you've all so comfortably taken your seats, I'm going to have to ask you to stand as the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts present the colors. Bobby Planzer, who's our bell ringer today, is going to now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Town Clerk Catherine Stover will now lead us in the national anthem. Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the Thank you. The Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts will now post the colors. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce the Reverend Dr. Ruth Smalt, Associate Minister at the First Congregational Church, who will give the invocation.
Let us pray. God of all creation, we thank you that we have the freedom to gather here today in the blessing of community. Awaken in each of us a deep respect for one another. Stir in us hope that we may work together for the common good. Merciful God, we pray that you would guide and direct our time together so that this meeting will be filled with wisdom and kindness. Instill in each of us a desire to work graciously together to care for this small patch of earth and coastland with which we are so grateful to be entrusted. And when this meeting draws to a close and we are weary, help us to stand tall in the knowledge that we attended thoughtfully to issues of social justice and creation care. Loving God, keep us true to our best selves in the hours ahead. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Small. Please join with me in observing a moment of silence in memory of those in our community who have passed away since our last town meeting. In particular, I want to mention three very strong women who we lost this past year: Suzanne Gardner, Edith Andrews, and Karen Borchert, who in their own ways dedicated their special talents and service to the town and their community. Thank you. You may be seated. This time, I will read the return of the warrant. Hereof, fail not, make due return of this warrant, your doings thereon to the town clerk at the time and place of meeting and election aforesaid, given under our hands this 20th day of January in the year 2007. Pursuant to Chapter 39, Section 10 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth and the warrant of January 20, 2016, I have notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Nantucket qualified to vote in town affairs to appear at the times and place and for the purposes within mentioned by posting said notification on February 2nd, 2016 at the Stop and Shop on Pleasant Street, the Town and County Building at 16 Broad Street, and upon the bulletin boards at the corner of Main and Federal Streets and Syosconset Square bulletin board at Stop and Shop Harbor Square. Sworn to under pains and penalties of perjury, John H. Stover, Constable, February 2nd, 2016. Now, I have not seen him here, but I believe I am recognizing, I hope, Tim Madden. Are you here, Tim? Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm representing Tim Madden. He's been our state representative for the Barnstable Dukes in Nantucket District since 2008. We're not here specifically to honor Tim, but he has announced that he's not running this year, so we're losing him. And I just want to say, add my voice to those who I'm sure will come forward in the coming months to thank you for your service over these past years.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate that. It's been a great honor and a pleasure. I represent the greatest district, if not just the Commonwealth, but I believe in the country. And what makes it so great is not just its beauty, but the beauty of its people. And this island has been very nice to me, and I greatly appreciate it. I'm not going to go on because we're not going to turn this into a complete day of mutual admiration. But I am here also, as Sarah knows, to present a citation as well, and perhaps more than one, to recognize someone else who I think has done so much for this island, and especially this town meeting. And they're not expecting this, so it's a surprise, so I'll give them a second to get up here. So with that being said, Sarah Alger, are you in the house? we'll let Sarah say a few words afterwards. But I have known Sarah for a long, long time, and it's been one of the best friendships and one of the nicest people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting with and working with. This is her 20th anniversary of serving town meeting, and that's not lost on me. To my knowledge, I think that might be the record for the island. I won't etch it and grant it because I can't say for sure. Perhaps Catherine Stover would know better. But with that, I know Sarah follows a long legacy. She followed her father, who she loved dearly. She lost him a few years back. But like her father, she has served town meeting members in the most respectful, wonderful way, and she has done it in a way that we will never forget, and we hope that she does it for many more years to come. Sarah, I have for you a citation from the House of Representatives. Let it be hereby known that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offer its sincere congratulations to Sarah Alger in recognition of moderating your 20th annual Nantucket Town Meeting, each done with a balanced and thoughtful approach and just the right amount of humor. We greatly appreciate your dedication to service. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and continued success in all endeavors. Offered this second day of April 2016 from the State House in Boston, Massachusetts, offered by the Speaker of the House, Bob Dillio, and myself, Representative Tim Madden. Sarah, once again, I love you and I love what you've done for this town meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I never would have let him up here in a million years if I had known he was going to do that. He would have stayed way in the back, right where he normally is. Second of all, I haven't retired or died, so I appreciate it. I thank you very much, but I really want to get this meeting done, so let's move on.
So my ruse for the day was someone who also deserves recognition, especially in this arena. With that being said, he doesn't know that his name is being mentioned, but he sits up fairly close to the front usually. So with that, before we get angry with him, let's give him a round of applause. Is Andrew Vorse in the house? With the effort to expedite the meeting, I will forget about the first part because it's redundant to what I just did for Sarah. But with that, we congratulate Andrew Vorse in recognition of being named a 2015 Professional Planner of the Year by Massachusetts Chapter of the American Planning Association. For all your hard work and decades of dedicated service to the town of Nantucket, we offer you sincere congratulations and gratitude. Andrew, thank you. It's a thankless job that you do, especially on days like today, but you've done it very respectfully, and you've always tried to listen to your constituents, and for that I'm grateful, and it's been great knowing you for so many years and being a friend. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I hope you all have a copy of the, I guess gold, I'd have to call it, Nantucket Town Meeting Traditions and Procedures. This is a supplemental set of rules that we go by in addition to town meeting time. Town meeting time is the handbook that we run this town meeting by under the charter. It's a little bit more user-friendly than Robert's rules, which tend to be quite formal. But town meeting time, traditions and procedures is something that Mark Arnold put together when he was moderator. He was my predecessor. We've updated it over time. I added a section this year that talks about slides because that's kind of become the new thing over the past couple of years. So we now have some guidelines for slides if you want to present something with your article. And I would ask, as we have done for at least the past 20 years that I know of, adopt these additional rules of the meeting by please saying aye. And any opposed? Okay, so we have adopted that unanimously. Thank you. You should also have a copy of the warrant, I hope. Please keep that warrant throughout the day, and God forbid if we have to come back on Monday, because we don't have a lot of extras. It has a beautiful cover photo, which I believe is the work of Dr. Greg Hinson. And also there are annual reports out front, one per family, please, and other handouts relating to articles that are coming up that you should try to get over the course of the day and take a look at. So before we get started, I want to just go over a few basic rules. One, we have to make a positive motion on each article. If you happen to call an article that did not receive a positive motion from the Finance Committee, it's incumbent upon you to provide a positive motion. We will help you do that. If you call an article and you don't have a positive motion to present, please come down and see Town Council during the course of the meeting. On votes, we'll try to do as many votes as possible by voice vote because that tends to move things along quickly. If there's any question, you can always rise to a point of order and ask for a hand count. We do have a bylaw that allows me to declare a 2/3 vote on articles. I only do that if it's absolutely clear to me that that 2/3 has been met. But again, if there's ever any question, please just leap to your feet and ask, and we'll do a hand count. 4/5 vote, there's only a couple of articles that require that, and those require either unanimous vote or a hand count. Please raise your hand. If you're raising your hand and you don't think that I'm seeing you, it's perfectly appropriate to say, Madam Moderator, to get my attention, or to ask the teller in your area to wave the microphone around so that you get my attention. Amendments should be in writing, if possible, given to us in advance and in duplicate. If you possibly can, if you email them, that's always helpful. All remarks should be directed to me. We don't want to have any sort of cross debate between voters in the hall, having conversations going back and forth between them. So everything comes through the chair. Please limit your remarks to the subject under discussion, which means the subject of whatever motion is there, and try not to stray off into areas that really aren't covered by that motion. And then I think most importantly, despite what's being modeled for us nationally, we are going to run this meeting in a civil and orderly manner. And that means no cell phones, no hats, no costumes, no catcalling, no name calling, no clapping, no whistling, no fist fighting, no swearing, no vulgarity, no hooting, no hollering, and most importantly, no personal attacks. We are a community here. When we leave this hall, we have to live together. So let's try to remember that in the course of the debate. I understand that people get passionate, and that is great. We want you to bring your passion to your town government, but please do it in a respectful way. We do have a bylaw that requires you to disclose if you've been hired by someone to come and speak on an article. So if you have been retained by somebody to come and speak, you need to disclose that. That applies not only to lawyers, but to anyone. So if your employer said, I'll pay you all day Saturday to come if you vote one way on an article, then you should disclose that. Let's see, I should introduce the people here at the tables in front of you. We have the Board of Selectmen, outgoing member Tobias Glidden, and we want to thank him for his service over the past 3 years. Rick Atherton, Don Hill-Holgate, Matt Fee, Bobby DaCosta, followed by Town Manager Libby Gibson, Town Council John Giorgio, Town Clerk Catherine Stover, Assistant Clerk Nancy Holmes, our bell ringer Bobby Planzer, then the Finance Committee, Chair Jim Kelly, David Worth, John Tiffany, Craig Sperry, Joe Grouse, Peter McEachern, Cliff Williams is the Vice Chair, and Dr. Mulcahy, and Steve Morey. I hope I didn't miss any of you. And then the Planning Board. Let's see, I see Vice Chair Linda Williams, Nat Lowell, Chair Barry Rector, and Joe Marklinger. And I am guessing that John McLaughlin is somewhere up in the back where he has been lo these many years. So we have just a few technical amendments that we need to read into the record. These are changes in the Finance Committee's recommendations that have come up since the warrant went to publication. The Finance Committee worked really diligently along with town administration to keep these technical amendments to a dull roar because they know that they take up a little time here in the front, and I really applaud everyone for their efforts. There's just always a few things that slip by, and it saves a lot of time for us to do it this way rather than calling the articles and trying to fix them that way. So I will read these in. And we have them on the screen too. So the first one is in Article 10. And we just need that one column to change from 150,000 to 100,000. Town administration costs associated with moving the town fueling station. The transfer amount was stated at 150, but the total was right in the far right column at 100,000. Article 30, under historic preservation, there's a reference to Preservation Institute Nantucket, and that allocation will go to Nantucket Preservation Trust with Preservation Institute Nantucket. Article 2, not Article 2. Article 55, in Section 2. There's just some words that weren't stricken that don't make any sense. Of the needs to go out so that it reads the owner of the lot under qualified family member. In Article 59, sorry, that was a late breaking. 59. The word not is being stricken. So it says that not more than one motor vehicle which is or for the immediately preceding 30-day period has been unregistered, disabled, dismantled, or inoperative shall be stored on any lot. Okay, Article 65. In Section 140-5, we're adding this sentence: a copy of any grievance shall be submitted to the above-named board and officer regardless of the entity to which it was originally submitted. And then in Articles 90, 91, and 92, we're adding the word photovoltaic, quote, PV, end quote, before renewable energy. So it first goes into Section 2 in Article 90. 1 and 2 in Article 90. Article 91, it goes in the motion. And the same with Article 92. Okay. So having done that, I think we're now ready to call the articles. Now, for those of you who are new to this, the process of calling the articles is that we'll identify the articles that we're going to take up for discussion. Any article that is not called will be voted on in a group with the other uncalled articles in accordance with whatever motion has been put forward by either the Finance Committee or the Planning Board. We will then take up the called articles in numerical sequence. If you call an article and you later in the day decide that your question's been answered or you're no longer concerned about the article that you've called, you may withdraw your call. If no one else in the room wants to take up your place, then we'll throw that article back into the pot and we'll vote it as a group with other withdrawn articles. You don't have to be an article sponsor or a town official to call. Any voter can call an article. You just have to yell out your name. I'll go through one time and then I'll go back a second time just to make sure we didn't miss any. Once we've closed the calling of the articles, we won't go back and reopen any article that wasn't called unless there's some dire need to do that, and I have yet to see the occasion for that to happen. But I'm not ruling it out, I guess. Okay. Any questions about that process before I start my number calling? Great. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mr. Lowell? Nine. Yes. Excuse me? Okay, thank you. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Mr. Ray? 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 26? 27, Mr. Sperry. 28, Mr. Sperry. 29, 30, 31, 32, Mr. Williams. 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. Ms. Parsons? 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 49? Okay. Bob Lang? Okay, and I have you all as well, Ms. Timmerman. $50? Ms. Timmerman? 51? 52? Mr. Stover? Yeah, there you are. Okay. 53, 54, 55, 54. Ms. Timmerman, 54. 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 63? Mr. Perlman? '64. Yes, Mr. Perkins? '65, 66, 67, 67? May I have your, oh, Mr. Dawson. Okay, sorry, there you are. 68, 69, 70, 70? Atlee, okay. 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 81, Mr. O'Mara. 82, 83, 84, 85, Ms. Stover. 86. Yes, Mr. Saperstein, 86. 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93. Mr. Collier? 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107. Okay. So once more with feeling. These articles are not called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8, Mr. Lowell. 9, Scarlett. Okay, sorry, I'm just not hearing you, so I got it. Thank you. Then the following are not called 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 18 has been called by Mr. Ray. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Yes? Did somebody say something? Okay. All right, so not called 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. Then 27 and 28, Mr. Sperry. Then not called 29, 30, 31. 32 is called by Mr. Williams. Not called 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. 38 was called by Ms. Parsons. And I do have a positive motion from you, Ms. Parsons. Mr. Williams, I will need a positive motion from you on Article 32. I meant to mention that as I was whipping by. Let's see. So not called, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. Mr. Collier? Not called by Mr. Lang and Ms. Timmerman, 49. Called by Ms. Timmerman, 50. Not called, 51. Called by Isaiah Stover, 52. Not called, 53. Called by Ms. Timmerman, 54. Not called, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. Yes? 59? The adult use bylaw? Excellent. Oh, 59. I'm sorry. Yes, abandoned vehicles, 59. Can I have your name? Richard Ross, thank you. Okay, so not called, 55, 56, 57, 58. Called by Mr. Ross, 59. Not called, 60, 61, 62. 63 called by Mr. Perlman, 64 called by Mr. Perkins. Mr. Perkins, I will need a positive motion from you on Article 64, so if you could see Town Council during the course of the meeting, that would be great. 65 is not called. I'm sorry, who was that? Oh, you? Okay, thank you, Mr. DaCosta, 65. Not called 66. Mr. Dawson has called 67. I do have a motion from you, Mr. Dawson. 68. Yes? And can I have your name, please? Dimick. Mr. Dimick on 68. Now, you know, that has a positive recommendation. So if you want it to pass, you shouldn't call it. Right? Yeah, I don't think you want to call it, Mr. Dimick. I think you want to let it go. Okay. So not called 69, 68, and 69. 70, Mr. Atlee. Not called 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80. 81 was called by Mr. O'Mara. Yes? Oh, okay. So not called. 81 is not called, but 82 is called. Okay, not called, 83 and 84. 85, Catherine Stover. 86, Mr. Saperstein, not called. 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92. Mr. Collier has called 93 and 94. And then the rest of the articles, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, and 107, all not called. So we will start with Article 8, and then yes, we are. I think so. But I'm going to go through the ones we're going to discuss just so I'm absolutely sure I didn't miss anything. So we're starting with 8, then 9, then 18, 27, 28, 32, 38, 48, 49, and 50, 52, 54, 59, 63, 64, 65, 67, 70, 82, 85, 86, 93, 94, and that is it. Okay, well, that's a day's work. So now we will vote all of the uncalled articles. So take a look, make sure the article you called is not in here. And the motion, excuse me? Okay, 47 was called. Oh, no, it isn't 47. Never mind. You have it right. Okay, so here's the motion, which I will recognize Mr. Kelly for the purpose of making. Moved that the following articles be voted as recommended and/or amended by the Finance Committee, or as recommended and/or amended by the Planning Board, as printed in the Finance Committee report with technical amendments brought forward during the course of the meeting. Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 29, 30, 31, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 51, 53, 55, 56, 57, 58, 60, 61, 62, 66, 68, 69, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 83, 84, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, and 107. Is that your motion, Mr. Kelly? Thank you. Is there a second? Motion is made and seconded. Now, because Article 2 involves unpaid bills from, I think, prior years or something, it requires a 4/5 vote. So if I don't have a unanimous vote, I will have to do a hand count, but no pressure. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, one other thing I want to mention is that we have 2 consultants for the town here. We're down in the front row. I think they're here from Woodward and Curran, primarily, I think, on the sewer article, Article 18, Rosemary Blacquier and Tom Hazlitt. So we will be hearing from them with your consent. Yes? It doesn't matter. 19 is fine because these properties can be put into the sewer needs area without the sewer actually being brought out to it. The properties in 19 are going to go into the Nantucket Harbor Shimo Needs area and whatever the other areas are that are identified. But if the sewer isn't brought to them, they won't be affected by Article 18. I think you need a... Mr. Giorgio, do you want to weigh in on this discussion?
Yeah, I just, if we change Article 18 or expand it or something, then I would think 19 would just follow along.
It won't, but I'll let Mr. Giorgio, Town Council, tell you because he's the authority.
Madam Moderator, I do not believe that Article 19 is dependent upon whatever action is taken under Article 18. Article 18, of course, is to appropriate money to sewer 2 areas in town. I will tell you now that a motion to amend that to expand the areas identified in the article. Of course, this would be ultimately up to the moderator, but I don't believe she would rule that that would be within the scope to expand. Article 19 puts all of those properties within the sewer district. And that can certainly happen even if Article 18 is not approved, because ultimately, in order to sewer those areas, we will need to have them in the sewer district. But the two are not technically dependent on one another.
Thank you. Yeah, you need to get a microphone.
I apologize for dragging this out, but I don't understand why Article 18 cannot be amended by the meeting, by an amendment.
It can be amended, but the amendment has to be within the scope of the article. So if you were going to try to amend it to include areas of the island that aren't currently covered by the article, I would rule that outside the scope of the article because people living in those areas would not have had fair notice.
Okay. All
So
right.
we can make the areas smaller. You can eliminate areas by amendment, but you can't add areas by amendment in this particular
Okay.
case.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have those two consultants. We also have a couple of property owners who are not voters, who are affected by articles, and as is our practice, when we get to those, we will allow limited comment from those non-voters on the matters that affect them personally. So with that, we will go directly to Article 8. Article 8 starts on page 7 of the warrant. The motion starts on page 8. It continues to page 11. I'm going to ask for your consent in the reading of that and ask Mr. Kelly to make the motion of the Finance Committee, which is as printed in the warrant.
So moved, Madam Moderator.
Is there a second? Motion is made and seconded. This is the general fund operating budget, and I understand, Mr. Lowell, you called this article and have something to say. If you could get a microphone, I think he's right behind up there. If someone could hand him a microphone, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My brother, whom I love dearly, has vehemently requested I not do this. But here I go anyway. Please forgive me, Nat. I think our father is probably rolling in his peaceful resting place at the numbers that we contemplate here today. Wouldn't it be nice if we could focus on Proposition 2.5 when calculating our annual budget? This year's increase is 6.28%. At this rate, we will reach $100 million in 5 years or less. That's comparable to a major city, in my mind. What happened to the frugal Yankee and the passion to contribute in the name of hometown pride? What happened to multitasking on the job and accountability? I think of an example from 1975 to share with you. Our 6th grade science teacher at the Cyrus Pierce School, Tony Dias. He was the school principal, and he was the disciplinarian, and he taught 3 classes a day. Another example from the past, many of you may remember Bud Clute. We all held great respect for him. He was a department superintendent. You would see him instructing his crew from the seat of a backhoe or from his knees while laying brick sidewalks. And best of all, he drove his own truck to work. Today you hear comments, and I quote these. I can't make these things up myself. If it wasn't for my job, I wouldn't live here. And I go to work and avoid work all day. This is one of my favorites. Oh, you're an overachiever. You're going to make the rest of us look bad. And another popular one is, "That's not in my job description." These are quotes of the new millennium. I guess I'm still stuck in the 70s. A sense of accountability and pride in the workplace has been lost, and it needs to be revived. We should be thankful to Mr. Vorse for implementing the "What can I do for you today" greeting at the Plus Department. Taking pride in maintaining our buildings, equipment, and current resources will keep town spending at bay. Proposition 2.5 was created in part for this purpose, but our strong economy here compels us to ignore it. A positive outcome of the past 3 decades of development is most of this budget is paid by non-residents. This is a fact to be appreciated because very few communities are so fortunate to be sought-after second home destinations. But our property values and taxes continue to rise, and the burden that year-round residents bear is having to contribute towards added infrastructure and damage to the environment, in turn forcing good people and friends to have to leave. How sad. Less fortunate communities discuss their budget at town meeting every year, often with heated debate, and often not being approved by vote, forcing the governing bodies to refer to a diminished default budget. I wonder if one of those is prepared here. Article 8 has not been called for discussion in 12 years. Wow, what a great town to live in and work for. The less fortunate worry about employee cuts. We negotiate step raises. I do not intend to amend this article, but I do hope to raise awareness and thoughts of accountability. But if someone else here today feels as passionate as I do to send a message to departments to keep their budget pencils sharpened, then stand up and say "so moved" to a motion to amend Article 8 not to exceed 2.5% increase and adhere to Proposition 2.5. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Is there anything else on Article 8? No. Okay. Seeing none, we will go to a vote. The motion is as printed in the warrant and as made by the Finance Committee. A yes vote will adopt the motion. A no vote will defeat the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That motion is adopted. It just requires a unanimous majority vote. Okay, Article 9. Article 9 is on page 11 of the warrant. I'm going to ask for your unanimous consent to waive the reading of the motion and ask Mr. Kelly to make the Finance Committee's motion as printed in the warrant. Mr. Kelly?
So moved, Madam.
Is there a second? Motion is made and seconded. Ms. Scarlett, if you could get a microphone. And identify yourself, please, for the record.
Hi, my name is Marita Scarlett. I live at 5 Gloucester Street. I'm a mother. I'm a middle school teacher. I was a social worker for an agency based off island called Justice Resource Institute, worked closely with Family and Children's Services. And I think most importantly, I'm a community member that's well aware of the impact of mental health needs and substance abuse crisis that's going on our island. The Inquirer and Mirror brought to my attention the apparent conflict between the Human Services Contractor Review Committee and Family and Children's Services of Nantucket. For a little background, it appears that Family and Children's Services requested an additional $20,000 for a total of $120,000 to take over the harm reduction program that was previously provided by Access Nantucket. This request was denied, and I don't really understand why. I don't know why they would ignore the request, not say why they declined it, and leave the money on the table. Were there personality conflicts, miscommunication? I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't care. What matters is we're in the midst of a deadly and costly crisis. It's impacting families all over the country, and cutting even $1 from services to reduce the impact of drug addiction on our community is simply unacceptable. Family and Children's Services has undergone a great deal of changes over the last few years. In the face of growing demands and decreased funding from the state, they've actually grown their clinical services. They've cleaned up their financials and been very open with that. I'm not an accountant, but from what I look at, they look pretty good. They created a family and resource center that provides free support to families, including but not limited to parenting classes, support groups, and guidance in negotiating with schools when your child is having difficulties. They also provide emergency psychiatric evaluations, psychoeducational evaluations, adult psychiatry, child psychiatry, in-home therapy, therapeutic mentoring, outpatient therapy, substance abuse counseling, and substance abuse groups. Programs associated with and services aimed to reduce harm are associated with drug addiction, including overdose prevention and education. Based on what I've seen from Family and Children's Services, I think they could even improve the model as it exists. There's already a total of $40,000 appropriated for health and human service nonprofits. We're not asking for any money that isn't already available. As you can see, that means there's $30,000 that will be left on the table after the funds are distributed as proposed. Madam Moderator, I would like to amend Article 9 to change the amount granted to Family and Children's Services of Nantucket from $100,000 to $120,000, with the understanding that the organization will use this money to continue the valuable harm reduction program at a time when the opioid crisis and overdose is so badly impacting our island.
Okay, so you're making a motion to increase the amount going to Family and Children's Services from $100,000 to $120,000.
Yes.
And then to make a commensurate change in the total of the article of $369,340 to $389,340?
Yes.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, so now we have this motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? Yes, Ms. Zoda?
I'd like to thank the last speaker for her contribution and support her motion. I have a question. I don't know what my Nantucket stands for, and there's $20,000 in there for that.
Behind you, there's a woman behind you standing up, if you could.
Hi, sorry. Dorothy Hertz, Chair of the Contract Review Committee. In the allocation of funds, through the process, we go through a 3-month process of the grant request, overview of the grants, on-site interviews with the grant recipients. We present back. We have numerous phone calls with Family and Children's. We held 3 interviews with the executive director, their finance director from the Town of Nantucket, and either their bookkeeper or their auditor. We also held a meeting with the executive director, first on-site meeting, which the executive director could not answer our financial questions that we had out. We made an offer to Family and Children's to come back to the table with an amended grant request, which they chose not to do. They do not provide 2 services they did provide earlier, which is the one-on-one service to the elementary school students, and the emergency care was cut from their programs. My Nantucket is mentoring youth, which actually gives services to 300 children on the island. We did make an increase in our grants to ASAP, who did come back with a grant request. We notice and recognize and are personally affected by the mental health and substance abuse problem on the island. But we also understand that we were given a fiscal responsibility, and we took months of looking at this. So we asked that if we got an anonymous vote from the Board of Selectmen, a unanimous vote from FinCom, a unanimous vote came from the CRC, we ask you to take into consideration the 3 months we spent going over the information given to us. We recognize the problem. We also know that there are things coming in the pike that are very important to the community, And we also recognize that a lot of these other organizations help with the problem of mental health and substance abuse. And let it be noted that the town did not fund the Harmless program, but not only did behavioral health take on the task, but Health Imperatives has taken on a major part of that program that was done by Access.
Thank you. So on the amendment on Article 9, yes. If you could stand and identify yourself.
My name's Kate Sale. I just am wondering why we're giving Martha's Vineyard $12,000.
Thank you. Ms. Hertz, that's really not on the amendment, but I'll let you address it.
Martha's Vineyard Community Services is actually a one-on-one program that is done by Kathy Hackett. And she actually provides care for Nantucket's families with children with special needs. So even though the name is Martha's Vineyard, she comes out of Falmouth. And basically, we give her about $1,000 per family, and she deals with these children from when they're young to sometimes when they're 30 or 40 years old. She stays in their lives. She is probably one of the most amazing things that has ever happened to the town of Nantucket. And she has helped Tim Madden get the funding, the additional $35,000 that's coming to the town for transportation of people off island for medical purposes. It's not really Martha's Vineyard.
Thank you. Mr. DaCosta. On the amendment.
Madam Moderator, before we sit here and try to decipher every little thing that's listed on here, I'm sure that the majority of the people in this room don't know what these different organizations are or what they do. The Board of Selectmen doesn't even know completely the detail that the Contract Review Committee has in this. They spent months on this. They came to our meeting, they gave us their recommendations. We spent almost an hour of our meeting going through each one of these recommendations. I'd hate to see us sit here and micromanage what an unbelievable committee that's truly dedicated to the health and well-being of this town does and sit here and pick it apart. So I would urge you not to vote for this amendment and to support the recommendations made by the Contract Review Committee.
Thank you. Ms. Soto, a final comment on this amendment?
It's probably a point of order because it's a general comment. The first gentleman that spoke about our fiscal responsibility and using our dollars wisely and working as hard as we can on our individual causes. Here we are looking at human services very carefully, and I think it's important. And I think that maybe we should be doing this with all our budgets, get more knowledgeable, check our figures, get out our calculators, and really watch it. I think human services needs our support. If Family and Children's Services needs another $20,000, we should give it to them.
Thank you. There's a woman up in the back section with a pink sweater. If you could stand up and get a microphone. Please identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Tess Pearson. I'm the Executive Director of Family and Children's Service. And a quick response, for the last 65 years, this community has pulled together to provide mental health and substance abuse services for our community. Over the last 2 years, as I stepped into this role, I am very proud of what we have fiscally responded to, with a clean audit and a Silver Guide Star Award for private not-for-profits. And this last year alone, serving 23,000 visits and 500 people in treatment. This last year, we had 288 crisis events in which our agency responded in a result of suicide, overdose, and self-attempt to hurt one another. This last year, we asked for $20,000 to provide harm reduction to the community for free, to talk about infectious disease and the ability to prevent death by heroin use. And the initial $100,000 that went towards sliding fee services. This is providing services up to $0 for cost for child medication management, psych testing, individual counseling, and free substance abuse groups. We maintain our initial ask to be fully funded at $120,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the gentleman up there in the back, Mr. Ross, I think it is.
Madam Moderator, I'd just like to say...
Are you Richard Ross?
I am Richard Ross.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say that I know several people that have used Family and Children's Services, myself being one of them. I won't go into the details as to why, but I'd just like to say that, as Mr. DaCosta said, they spent an hour reviewing this specific topic about what the Grants Oversight Committee, or whatever it's called, went through and actually looked at. Well, from my experiences and from experience of people I know, when you're dealing with a mental health issue, a lot of times it's a lot more than what an hour of your time or 3 months of your time goes into. A lot of these people, the money that it actually costs to go in there and to go and have an appointment, a lot of times the average person going in there doesn't have that kind of money. So from what I've seen a lot of times is Family and Children's Services, they don't refuse treatment to somebody because they're unable to pay. They're doing their part, and if they need an extra $20,000 to do their part to help the community, I think it's worth it. So thank you.
Thank you. So on the amendment, yes, this gentleman here, if you could stand and take the microphone, identify yourself for the record.
I'm Peter Morrison, and I just have a question either addressed to the Finance Committee or possibly to Dorothy Hertz. I heard the statement made, quote, they've cleaned up their financials, and there seems to be some unanimous agreement that there is something not cleaned up or something missing. And I'm wondering if anyone has consulted with the town finance director. Perhaps Dorothy Hertz can speak to that. And if so, has the town finance director given us any advice on this or view on this?
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Yes, Peter. The finance director has been involved in this, reviewing their financials over the last couple of years, and has given us feedback on that. And Brian, if you'd like to speak to that, you certainly can. Brian Turbot.
He wasn't looking terribly enthusiastic there, Jim, but...
Does that answer your question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, they couldn't hear you, Jim.
So to Mr. Morrison's question, the financials have been reviewed by the town finance director and the contract review committee over the last several years. Improvements have been noted, and those improvements have been reported by the finance director back to the finance committee.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Williams.
I wasn't going to speak today because I'm not feeling well. I'm just trying to get to the end of the day. But I was a long-time member of the Contract Review Committee. And we worked well for a long time until boards started to change.
Okay, let's not go there.
I'm not
let's
going
talk
there,
about the amendment,
but I'm going,
please.
the amendment should be given. This particular applicant has been raked through the coals now many times over the years for good reason, because before Tess took it over, it was in financial trouble. They had trouble with all kinds of aspects from it. But I've had 5 foster kids. All 5 have been serviced by the counseling center, and one of my own children. They've done an excellent, excellent job of servicing. We don't have Access Nantucket anymore. They probably need more money than what they asked for, but I think the extra $20,000 as part of their original ask is kind of critical for them to keep going so they don't get back into trouble under her excellent leadership. They are solvent now. It took a long time to get there, but they're a great organization.
Thank you. So let's not do the clapping thing. Way up in the back, very back of the room, on the amendment.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Benji McGowan, and I agree with Linda. They should be given more. I don't know why they're only given 20. I am just like Richard Ross. I had to use their services, and they were awesome. They helped me so much because financially I would not have been able to go anywhere. and they really saved me. And I think it's a wonderful service, and I think it should stand very high on priority on our list.
Okay, I think we're ready to take a vote on this amendment. We're just voting on the amendment, and the amendment is to increase the amount going to Family and Children's Services by $20,000 from $100,000 to $120,000. That has the effect of increasing the article total to $389,340. Is there anything further on the amendment that's new? New information? Okay, the woman up in the back, and then we're going to go to a vote.
I'm Ann Dyer at the Nantucket New School, and we desperately need the services that are provided by Family Children's Services, and I urge support.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're just going to go to a vote now on the amendment to Article 9. This is just the amendment to increase the funding for Family and Children's Services by $20,000. Requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That motion is adopted. Now, on Article 9, as amended, okay, not seeing anything. So now we'll be voting on the motion of the Finance Committee as printed in the warrant, as amended by Ms. Scarlett's amendment to increase the Family and Children's Services by $20,000 to $120,000 and the article total to $340,000. I should say that right. $389,340. Requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. That motion is adopted by majority vote. Article 18. Article 18 appears, I think, on page 25 of the warrant. The Finance Committee motion starts on page 26. I'm going to ask for your unanimous consent to waive the reading of that motion. Mr. Kelly is recused from this article because he lives in one of these districts. And Dr. Mulcahy is going to make the Finance Committee motion as printed in the warrant. Dr. Mulcahy?
So moved, Madam Moderator.
Is there a second? Motion is made and seconded. I'm going to go to Mr. DaCosta for purposes of explaining the article and sort of setting up the discussion.
So why are we here? Why do we need to sewer? The answer is very simple. The federal government has told the states that we are mandated to get our TMDLs. TMDL stands for total maximum daily load of nitrogen below our threshold number, or they will come in and do it for us. Now, contrary to what everyone has heard or read or wondered about, the only way that we can get our maximum daily loads in Nantucket Harbor and in Town Harbor is to sewer parts of our town. Fertilizer regulations and raising the jetties will not do it alone. Right now, we have the opportunity to borrow money from the state at zero financing and retain local control as to how we sewer and when we sewer. If we don't sewer now, the state will come in and they will tell us where we're going to do it and how much we're going to pay for it and how we're going to pay for it, and we won't have any input whatsoever into that. Just on the plus department, the plus section of parcels and the Shimo-Monomoy, by retaining zero financing, we save $23 million in interest. That's at zero financing, or if we were to borrow it at our normal 3.5% rate, which is what we borrow money for. That's 2%, Brian? They were looking at 2, but our normal borrowing rate is 3.5%. So if we were to borrow the $41 million, it would be $23 million in interest. We're going to have to do this sooner We're going to have to do this anyway. The state's going to make us do it. The federal government's going to make us do it. If we can save that money in interest right now, this is the time to do it.
Thank you. Okay. So I think because I have an amendment from Mr. Ray, I'll go to that first. And that amendment is to change the allocation of the costs by eliminating the 25% going to betterments on the owners of land to be served by the new sewers pursuant to the uniform unit method authorized under General Laws, Chapter 83, Section 15, and changing the 75% of project costs shall be paid by the town to 100% of the project costs being paid by the town, as shown on the screen. Is that your amendment, Mr. Ray?
It is, Madam Moderator.
Is there a second? Motion is made and seconded. Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I am fully in agreement with Mr. DeCosta's synopsis of our issues here. In the interest of clarity, I'm going to read off a prepared statement because I'm new at this. Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good morning. Although I am retired, this is a milestone day for me professionally. It should also be a milestone day for Nantucket. Nantucket's harbor water quality is not a new issue. Harbor water quality concerns have been studied and discussed over the past 20 years. All three studies, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Study, the UMass Maritime Studies Report, and the DEP Estuaries Report have all denoted nutrient loading as a major culprit in the degradation of our harbors. A large portion of this is definitively from wastewater. We are here today to make a decision on the reclamation of our harbor. Municipal sewering of high-density areas abutting our harbor is certainly the initial appropriate approach to remediation. Having said that, I have brought this amendment to all of you as I believe the abutters of our harbor are not the sole contributors to our harbor's water quality. We, you and I, have ownership of this harbor, and this harbor's water quality should be ours to manage. You and I should be responsible for its remediation. I understand that spreading the cost of this remediation 100% across the tax base will mean increased financial issues for many, particularly us on fixed incomes. I recognize that the monetary increase difference for the average residential taxpayer on this article alone is approximately $33 per year for 30 years between the current approach and this amendment. But this is our harbor. It is one of the main reasons we live here. Recreational and commercial scalloping, fishing, swimming, all other recreational uses, these are all activities we take advantage of, not to mention the draw this harbor has for our tourist economy. I sincerely believe that each and every one of us has the responsibility to assume an equal portion of the cost of this remediation of this incredible water resource. So at this point, I would ask that you please adopt this amendment as the fair and appropriate approach to remediation, and let's proceed with getting this harbor water body repaired. Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay. On the amendment, yes, up in the, if you could stand and identify yourself.
Yes, my name is B. Ganella. I live at 14 South Valley Road in Shomo, and I'd just like to make a couple of points. One thing is, if the state does indeed step in and take over, I suspect that they will spread it across the entire tax base. I doubt seriously that they will go to individual homeowners and say, you have to pay an unprecedented proportion of this. The other thing that I would like to say is that most of us in this room would be really hard-pressed if we were suddenly asked to come up with $30,000. For some residents, it may mean even $100,000 or more, and more for land and homes that have been in our families for generations. It may mean a college education for our kids. It may mean a retirement fund for seniors who it's just going to go down the sewer. It may mean emergency health care for us. That too would go down the sewer. If we vote to go forward with the betterments as they are proposed in this article, we're not just throwing our children's education in the sewer or our parents' homes and retirement in the sewer. We're throwing our children, our parents, and our grandparents in the sewer. If we're willing to do that, what else are we willing to do? Just think about it. We all know that we need to protect our harbor, which we will benefit from and enjoy. It's not just about the money or the harbor. It's about the people. The harbor belongs to all of us. It should be subsidized and maintained by all of us. I urge that this article or this amendment be adopted as Mr. Ray has suggested. Homeowners should not be left trying to figure out how much they'll honestly need. Well, they need to take out a new mortgage or a second mortgage if they can get it. I'm a senior citizen. I doubt seriously if I'll live long enough to pay back a mortgage I might have to take out on it, and no bank would probably give it to me. Finally, I urge the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to be considerate, if not compassionate, toward those for whom this plan represents an unbearable, undue, and unacceptable hardship. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on the amendment. Okay, Ms. Benz, do you have an opposite view? Okay. If someone, you're about to get a microphone.
My question has to do with other decisions that have been made by the town in terms of voting that residents who become sewered have to pay for betterments. How does, we're setting a precedent here for 100%. How does that affect people who are now paying for what this particular approach suggests that is going to be the future?
Okay. Excuse me? This is the first one, correct? Yeah, this is setting the precedent for the future. Mr. Fee?
Well, I've been working on this as long as Richard, and I urge you to not accept this amendment. And the reason I'm saying that, it's a question of fairness. All of these areas are going to have IA systems. Those are anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000. So someone in one area is going to be asked, if we vote 100%, they're going to get it pretty cheap. Their neighbor right next door is going to pay $50,000 or $70,000. That's, in my mind, that's not fair. The other thing, a couple other things, is if we do this, what are the consequences? We haven't thought about what the consequences of putting 100% on the tax base is. One of the problems I foresee is issues like 106 Surfside. Well, those large lots will expect us to pay for their sewering. The principle I've been working on, and there's a couple other things like that too. The principle I've been working on is I think that the 25-75 split gets it there, is the cost should be similar or less than an IA system would be for these individuals. We have to remember this has to be voted positively at the ballot. And there's about half the people aren't going to be benefited by this and may not want to pay for it. We've worked on this 15 years. Recommendations were 60-40. We came down to 25-75. I think that's where it should be. I think that puts it at the cost of an IA system in Nantucket. I can understand why people would hope that someone else would pay for it, but there's no such thing as a free lunch. My mom always told me that. If we don't pay for it through betterments and a combination, you're going to pay for it through your taxes, and then you're going to set a precedent where we have to pay for a lot more utilities and stuff that's leading to issues that we may not want, more cars, more houses, everything else. So you be very careful about that. The idea that this has never happened isn't true. When we did the plant, it was $40-something million. 2/3 of that was paid by the users. 1/3 was paid by the tax base. So to say we've never done betterments, we've never put the cost other than on the tax base isn't true. The other part about it is on the tax base, there's a lot of people who are struggling, and it's 5 years from now, the costs, our taxes, with this at 75-25, will go up about between 20 and 30%. If we do this, it's going to be on the higher end. So you've got to really think about it. I think I'd like to see this voted as written. I'd like to see us all support that. We all know how important the harbor is, and then move on to Nantucket. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Wheatley? On the amendment.
Yes, Madam Moderator, on the amendment, Nancy Wheatley, 6 Wrights Landing. As regulars here know, I'm known as the sewer lady, and I've been doing this for a while, including chairing both the Sewer Advisory Committee and the Sewer Planning Work Group most recently. The Sewer Planning Work Group had a 50-50 proposal in terms of the betterments. The majority of the members were much closer. It would have probably gone to 100%, but there were some in the group, which was very representative and a very good, one of the best work groups I've ever been on. But since we finished our deliberations and gave it to the Board of Selectmen, I've realized there's a different perspective for this. When the sewer system was built, it only covered part of the island, but until we had the enterprise fund, it was paid for by the taxpayers. So many of you who are now on sewer and have paid a lot of money because of what's happened in terms of expanding, the cost of expanding the plant, you've paid a lot since we've had the new plant. And so from my perspective, if you think about the areas, the neighborhoods which are long-standing neighborhoods, they're just like the folks that are on sewer now. And the taxpayers paid for the sewer in town. So why shouldn't we as taxpayers, and I said I live in Wrights Landing, I'm out in Tom Nevers, I will share the burden. And I'll never be on the sewer system. I think it's the right thing to do. It's the way the sewer system was built in the first place, and it will make it much easier, particularly for the year-round folks, for us to go ahead with sewering, which, as once again regulars know, I am very much in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a man up in the back. Yep. Mr. Martella.
To Mr. Neil Martilla, 48 Meadowview. To Mr. Fee, what if someone already has an IA system?
I'm not sure I quite understand the system. If they have it now?
Correct. So if I already have an IA system, will I be forced to be put onto town sewer and then have to pay technically for the IA system and the connection?
Well, Roberto could probably answer more, better than I can, but there's a ACO system where you can get an administrative consent order. You can, if your system is good, we may allow or will allow that to stay for a certain number of years. At some point, your system is going to need to be, it's going to fail. It's going to need to be taken care of. So at some point, you're going to have to be in the sewer. But at this point, those are some of the details that will get worked out. Roberto can give it exactly.
Mr. Santa Maria?
There we go. Yes, Roberto Santa Maria, Director of the Public Health Department. We do have a program, the ACO program, to continue so you can escrow money so that you can connect to the sewer. And we do have a variance request form so that you can request to extend the time for you to connect to the sewer. I believe the Meadowview area is outside of some of the areas, but since you already have the IA system, you would be able to you're only going to be required to connect already within 2 years, but you can request a variance from the Board of Health to request it for further than that. We accept variance requests from anyone and everyone who feels aggrieved by this regulation, and we hear it at our regular meetings every month. Feel free to apply.
Thank you. Dr. Mulcahy?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Matt Mulcahy, Finance Committee. I just want to reiterate a couple of points that were made by Mr. Acosta and Mr. Fee. Number one is that these boards work together to come up with an equitable solution. Does it please everyone? No. but we tried to take a macro view to look at the island-wide and to keep it fair for everyone. Number two, the question is not whether or not we should approve these sewers. The question is, how are we going to share the cost? Let me be very clear. We are going to be told in no uncertain terms that we have to sewer these areas and other ones, Nantucket, Somerset, in the near future. It's been very clear to us. These boards are trying to work on the cheapest, for lack of a better term, way to do it. This is in two ways. One, thanks to Mr. Madden, the amortization was changed from 20 years to 30 years, which is a big savings for all of us. And more importantly, we have until August of this year to take advantage of 0% interest on a $27 million project. If we lose out on this opportunity, we will add, and I will correct Mr. DaCosta, $13.5 million in interest alone. $13.5 million. This committee feels that this money is well spent now because there are other capital projects coming down the road. And then one last point is that you may hear about, well, let's delay this to another meeting and let's study it more and let's see what happens. This has been studied for 10 years. More studying will not help the situation. We cannot kick the can down the road on this. Fiscally, it is time to act now. This committee supports this motion. Frankly, it was not a unanimous decision. There is a big sentiment for 100%. We on the Finance Committee encourage that you pass this article and vote for it on April 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Charles Stott. I'm the president of the Nantucket Residents Association, and I also served on the sewer planning work group. Based on the results of a survey conducted among our members, our board of directors voted to support 100% of the cost of sewering these areas on the tax base. We did so in part because we recognize that whatever decision is made here today will probably set a precedent for when sewers come to Nantucket and Warren's Landing and Somerset. We view wastewater treatment as a public good, much like public education and police and fire protection. We don't assess users' fees on the parents of public school students, and we don't think that user fees should be placed on homeowners who are required to hook up to the septic systems. I would appreciate very much your support of the amendment offered by Mr. Ray.
Thank you. Okay, so, yes, the woman here. If you could wait for a microphone, she'll run up for you.
You have to reach over.
Yes, I'm Maureen Phillips, and I live at 30 Long Pond in Nantucket. And I just wanted to present a couple of facts for people. I can't imagine anyone here thinks that sewers aren't a good thing, but people should know that from the 2015 Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection report on the Nantucket Harbor and Long Pond estuarine systems, the nitrogen, which comes from septic tanks, accounts for over half of the pollution in our area. That is the controllable pollution. That nitrogen feeds, that nitrogen decreases the amount of oxygen in the water. And right now, the eelgrass in Hither Creek is essentially gone. It is dead. Their scallops cannot breed there. They need eelgrass.
and sewage systems are the main culprit. I would also point out, in terms of fairness, that the landfill, this is the first time I'd ever heard of it, the landfill is 25% of the nitrogen loading for Nantucket and Long Pond. Now, everybody in the whole town benefits from the landfill, but we're the lucky ones who get to have our waters polluted by it. Now, I'm not saying to move the landfill or anything else, but I am talking about fairness. And Charlie's comments about the schools, fire, are very relevant. And we also need to think about the fact that we pay for lots of things that we don't have in these areas, street lights, there's a lot of stuff that we help pay for that we don't get, and so I think this needs to be spread around the town. And just a quick question, the 0% financing ending in August, does that mean that will not be available for Nantucket for the next step? Because that is a huge issue. There's even more money involved, and I'm very concerned that Nantucket, that the second phase will not get 0%. Sorry to go over.
Thank you. Mr. Turbot?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Brian Turbot, Director of Municipal Finance. The 0%, the reference to the August is if we don't take action on the two projects before you today by June 30th, we would have to then reapply in August. We will be, because Nantucket, Warren's Landing, and the Somerset projects were taken off, they will be reapplied for that program in August. And then we would, once we get notified that we've been accepted, we would have until June 30th of the following year to take action on those.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
The question is, what are the chances of being accepted?
They are very good still.
Great. Okay, on the amendment, Ms. Benz? Yeah, I'll come to you next, Mr. Marklinger.
I just have two further questions. One is whether someone could explain who pays for the connection to the sewer line, whether that is the homeowner or whether that is the taxpayer. And secondly, what is the additional revenue that will be generated for the town from these houses using the sewer?
Mr. DaCosta?
Any hookup cost will be paid for by the homeowner. The town, this article will run the pipe down the street and to their property. So whatever they have to do to hook to the pipe will be, the burden will be on the individual. As far as the increased revenue for the sewer department, because most of these homes are on individual wells, they'd be billed quarterly. And what is the rate, Brian? I can't remember. It's like $1,000 a year? It's $1,000 a year, so it'd be $250 a quarter. They also would have to pay the hookup fee and the privilege fee. The hookup fee is $500, the privilege fee $6,300.
Okay. Mr. Marklinger?
Just a question. Is there a benefit to the people in the sewer district in the form of density, increased density? Like more bedrooms, that kind of thing? An extra cottage? Does anybody know? No? Well, it's too late now.
Ms. Holgate?
I think that there could be a benefit realized. It depends on whether someone wants to take advantage of that they could increase their number of bedrooms by being sewered, or they might realize a benefit in terms of the area that their septic's taking up could now be built on. A swimming pool might be able to be installed, those kind of things. So there is potential benefit.
Yes, the gentleman in the center here, if you could stand up. Here comes the microphone. Look to your right, left, right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. John Millar. Can someone tell me if our sewer treatment plant can handle all these hookups? And if it can't, is there monies in the 41 million to cover that?
Ms. Buzganowski?
Thank you, Kara Buzanowski, DPW Director. At the 2015 annual town meeting last year, you appropriated $8.8 million for the upgrade of the Surfside plant. That is in the works, and we are in the process of putting the construction documents together, and that will start probably in September. So that is all taken care of already, not included in the request before you.
Okay. Is there anything new on the amendment, the allocation of funds, new information from anyone I haven't heard from first? The gentleman up here in the back, and then I'll come back over here, and then I'll come down to the table here. Yeah, if someone could get a microphone.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The question about...
If you could identify yourself for the record.
Excuse me, Tom Doherty, 10 Moore's End Lane. The question about costs to the homeowner is relevant, and I wanted to elaborate a little bit on that. As a homeowner, if they bring the sewer to you, you are going to have to bear the burden of the costs associated with hooking up. That includes having a design, engineering design done. You have to apply, you have to get a permit. There's the actual installation cost, the town fees that Mr. DaCosta mentioned, the decommissioning of your existing septic system, which may include excavating it, crushing it, and backfilling it, filling it in, whatever. You might also need, depending on your personal situation, a low pressure pump to get sewage effluent to the system. That's $5,000 all by itself. If you have the sewer system come to you as a homeowner, you better be budgeting $25,000 to $30,000 for that. In addition to, if this article stands without amendment, the significant betterment fee. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cannella?
B. Ganella, I'd just like to remind everybody, if anybody thinks that we've had a free ride on a septic tank, they're wrong. It was only a few years ago that the town mandated that we upgrade all of our septic systems. That's no small cost. We all upgraded our septic systems within the last couple of years. Now we're being asked to add on to that the cost of breaking them down again, the cost of all these hidden costs. We don't even know what all these hidden costs are. And it's going to come to Nantucket too, and if we're going to set precedent and charge the homeowners in one area, the other area better be prepared also.
Thank you. Was there Mr. Atherton?
I just wanted to go through a couple things that maybe aren't exactly clear, and part of that is the split. I'm speaking in favor of the article as presented to town meeting and not in favor of the amendment. I think we have to recognize that this is just the first phase in terms of the impact on taxpayers of what is over a $200 million project. Also, I think you need to recognize that all those folks on septic systems in the Harbor Watershed District are going to be required over time, those are people who are not to be sewered, to replace any Title V systems with alternative systems. So they are, in effect, going to be asked to be bettered 100% for their share of the cost to improve the output and lower the nitrogen from their septic systems. And it seems to me it's equitable then that the people who are going to benefit from, in effect, a new connection by being new sewer customers share some of that burden, even if it's only 25% of the overall cost. I also should point out that our water company, has a long-established policy when it extends lines to Nantucket, for example, that the Water Enterprise Fund pays for the extension itself. It doesn't go to the tax base. It asks all new connections to pay a fee, in effect a betterment, which I think is roughly expected to be equal to 75% of the cost of extending that line down their road. And once they become customers, then they do pay into the water company to help recoup through the user fees. I think it is significant that the Sewer Enterprise Fund will collect, let's say, roughly $1,000 per customer. How many new customers we're going to get out of this, I'm not exactly sure, but let's say it's 300, just to pick a number. So that's roughly $300,000 of new revenue to the sewer fund. And essentially, the sewer fund will have very little cost to put those new customers on. The capacity of the plant has already been assured, and that $300,000 is incremental revenue, and it seems to me that's another reason that reasonable cost sharing amongst everybody is quite appropriate here. Also, the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen met together in a long session. This has been a long period of time to figure out an appropriate split, and the vote in favor of the split presented to town meeting by both groups was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the amendment, and the camera people have asked me when you put your hand up, if you could wave it around. Everybody blends in. You wouldn't believe it, but you do. So the woman in the pink right at the beginning of the back section.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Mary Ann Hagley, and I live in Nantucket. And I've been to many town meetings, and I've never, ever spoken. But I am really fired up about this issue. We spent $70,000 5 years ago getting a brand new septic tech system, state-of-the-art, green, environmental, moved trees, dug holes, did the whole thing. And now we're hearing, 5 years later, that we're going to have to get onto the water, spend $8,300 to get it down our very long driveway, and maybe spend another $8,300 because we also have a guest house. So everything that Ms. Gonella spoke about and this gentleman back here spoke about is absolutely true. 5 years ago, we were told your system failed. We didn't get the $30,000 system. We didn't get the $42,000. We went Big Daddy on the $70,000. And could have been a nice trip to Europe for 7 months, but instead we did what we had to do, believing that this was the right thing. Nobody in the town called me or my husband and said, let's help you pay for that. We did that ourselves. And our septic system will not fail, and if it does fail in 20 years, the leach field may fail, so we have the option of moving our leach field to another location. And I just feel that the people that live in different areas that were told that had a failed septic system did the right thing, that this is completely unfair to those people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Drake? Okay. Mr. Drake has called the question on the amendment. Now, the effect of calling the question on the amendment is that we go directly to a vote on the motion to call the question. If you are tired of talking about the amendment and you want to go to a vote on the amendment, you would vote yes on the motion to move the question. If you would like to continue debate on the motion, you would vote no. It does require 2/3 vote, so 2/3 of the people here will have to decide to end debate. So on just the motion to move the question, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. A 2/3 vote has been declared. That motion is adopted. So we go directly to a vote on the motion to amend Article 18 presented by Mr. Ray. This requires a majority vote. A yes vote will adopt Mr. Ray's amendment. will change the allocation from 75-25 to 100% on the tax base. A no vote will defeat that amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. That amendment is adopted. Okay, so now we're on Article 18 as amended by Mr. Ray. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Wheatley.
Thanks. Nancy Wheatley, 6 Rights Landing. I believe you have an amendment there on your screen, Madam Moderator.
I do. So your amendment, Ms. Wheatley, is to change the appropriation amount from $41 million to $13 million, and to change in 2 places. And that's it?
No, and to change the, if you go down a little bit, there is a section there. You need to scroll down a little, I believe.
Okay.
Which includes the plus parcels and the Monomoy, Nantucket Harbor Shimo, formerly Monomoy. So my amendment is to...
Wait, let me just get this amendment right. So take out the "and" after 2015. No, right there. Take out the other "and," I think. Oh, okay, no. And, okay, that's fine. So, okay, so this is your amendment, to change the amount from $41 million to $13 million and to eliminate the Nantucket Harbor Shimo, formerly titled Monomoy area.
That's my amendment, Madam
Is
Moderator.
there a second? Motion is made and seconded. Okay, Ms. Wheatley, tell us about it.
Well, we are about to go into discussion of whether we should pass this article, and we will then have to vote on it. And I've spent some time over many years. Actually, Mr. Fee said we've been working on this for 10 years. I think it's been a lot longer than that, actually. And I first got involved in this when I came to town meeting, and we voted against an administrative consent order for reasons that were unclear to me. That's when I really got involved. So now here we are in 2016, and when the sewer planning work group was working, I'm sorry, I just thought of this morning, so I apologize for being a little disoriented here. But there was a plan on the order in which the parcels would go and it was worked out. And as I was preparing for town meeting and reading the letters to the editor and looking at the articles, I realized that there's a lot of opposition to doing this, to spending the money to do this. And now that we've put 100% on the taxes, I think there's even more danger that the article won't go forward. It is very clear to me that the plus parcels need to be done, and they should be done soon. So I was, because of Mr. Miller's letter in particular, I really do think that we have changed the order of things. We've changed the interest in where the harbor really needs to be improved, and we put Nantucket Harbor and Shimo first. And I'm not sure that that part of the harbor is really where we have the nutrient problems. So I don't want this. I don't want this article to go down, although I have been struggling about whether I would vote yes. I think it is clear that we need to do the plus parcels, so I'd like to give us a chance to do that rather than have the article not adopted. So if you are inclined to vote against the article, I would hope you would vote for my amendment so that we can at least begin to move forward. And I think Mr. Turbot said that there isn't still an opportunity to get 0% funding in the future. So I don't think that should be an issue.
Okay. On the amendment, Mr. DaCosta.
Well, first of all, this article puts the funding, SRS funding, in jeopardy. So we could potentially lose the zero financing. Second of all, I'm going to speak now, not as a member of the Board of Selectmen, but as a fisherman. This is ridiculous. We need to sewer these areas, and we need to do them now. I spend half my life on the harbor and on the water, and I can take you for a ride up and down this harbor, and I can show you that the harbor is dying. And if we don't act now, it will be dead. Enough. We keep putting this off and coming back and forth. I'm personally glad that it went to 100% financing. I live in an area that's completely septic. I will never have sewer run down my road. It will never happen. I will gladly pay whatever my portion of it is to make sure that my kids and my grandkids have clean water and clean ponds. You know, the only reason that we even have a scallop...
No, please don't do that. It's just
The only
makes
reason
it
that we
go
have
forever.
a scallop fishery right now, or what's left of a scallop fishery, is because 100 years ago, our forefathers had the foresight to run pipe around the downtown area. Every other town on the Cape, with the exception of the Vineyard, has no scallops left. Scallops are the first to go with nitrogen, the very first. That doesn't mean that once they're gone, something else isn't going to go. It's time to do this. Stop trying to micromanage it, stop trying to amend it to death. It's $41 million for these 2 phases. We're going to come back in the fall, and we're going to ask for whatever it is to do Nantucket, and then our future generations will have clean harbors and clean ponds. Just raising the jetties is not going to do it. Fertilizer regulations are not going to do it. I got an email yesterday or a text from somebody that said there's a magic pill that you can put in your septic tank that'll take care of all the nitrogen. Rosemary spent 3 days researching it. There's no magic pill. There's no magic bullet to fix this. The only way we fix it is to run pipe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Collier?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Cormac Collier, I'm the Executive Director of the Nantucket Land Council. We are an environmental group on the island. Many of you are familiar with us. I would wholeheartedly agree with Mr. DaCosta. I could explain my position, but I'm actually astounded that this has even come up. And what I would like to do initially is ask why Ms. Wheatley sees the need to do the plus parcels.
Okay, so that's your
And
question.
then I'd like to follow up.
Okay. Ms. Wheatley?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to Mr. Collier. Those parcels were initially left out of the sewer, the sewer districts when they were put in. And they're in areas which clearly should be sewered because of the size of the properties, et cetera. And I think I have felt all along that we should have started this at least 10 years ago when we had the first CWMP and we first started talking about sewering Nantucket. And since then, we've had changes to the septic system rules, and it's caused a lot of concern. It's cost a lot of money for people. And the reason I did this is because we need to get going, but there are a lot of credible arguments out there against passing this article. And I did this to, as I said before, if you think you are going to vote against this, then I would ask you to support this article so that we can pass it. And if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collier. You had a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. Actually, in writing, the reason why the plus parcels are included is because they are in the Hummock Pond watershed and in the Wellhead Recharge District, and potentially portions are in the Nantucket Harbor watershed. There are clear environmental reasons for including the plus parcels. There are also clear environmental reasons, number one priority for including the Monomoy parcels, formerly titled Monomoy, but Nantucket Harbor Shimo parcels. The Nantucket Land Council recently granted the town $25,000 to do an eelgrass survey in Nantucket Harbor and Nantucket Harbor. This was done through aerial surveys and then ground truthed with various scuba and snorkel divers. We have lost since the 1990s over half of our eelgrass beds, and in some places, completely 100% destruction. One of the major causes is because of our septic systems. We have to get this going. We can't, as Dr. McKay said, kick the can down the road. We need to get this going. I ask that you do not support this amendment and then support the entire article. Thank you.
Thank you. Up by Dave Franzuto, you have someone? Yes.
No. Oh, thank you. Is it on? Hi, my name is Jean Allen. About 27, perhaps 28 years ago, I sat in the old high school auditorium, which is presently Cyrus Pierce Auditorium, gym. When we voted on whether or not to build the building we sit in, I was very inspired at the time to vote for a new high school, since I had at that time 6 children who are now in their 40s. That being said, I was very inspired by the fact that there are a lot of people of my age with gray hair who were sitting there and voting for a new high school, though they had children and grandchildren way beyond the high school age. They were there because they knew we needed a new high school. They were going to have to pay for a new high school that they would probably never even walk through except to attend a grandchild's graduation. That being said, are we here to do what is right individually, or are we here to do what is right for the place we say we love? Do we really like this island? Do we really care what happens to it? Well, if we do, take a look at the harbor. My husband scalloped for years. His father before him did. Take a look at the harbor. We need sewers. Is it good for me? I'm on a fixed income up the yin-yang. I'm $400 above the poverty line, okay? Now, that being said, I'll hand you, anybody here, $36 for my share of this thing on the tax base. I'll hand you 72. Can we please do the right thing? If I have to suck it up, no problem. My grandchildren are here. I would like them to be able to see what my children saw in the Nantucket Harbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so in the front row of the back section, on the amendment.
On the amendment, this is Bruce Mandel. I live in Nantucket. I would urge that this amendment not pass. I agree with what's been said by Mr. Costa. We need to protect not only Nantucket Harbor, but Nantucket Harbor. And the fund, as far as the discussion of the 0% interest, the Nantucket sewer system extension is currently on the state's approved list for the subsidy to bring the interest rate down to 0. We will lose that on this round. And what the finance director, and we've heard before, has said that it is possible to apply again, and it is possible Nantucket might be approved. It might be very likely, but there is no guarantee that, number one, the funding will continue. The legislature could do something about that. And there is no guarantee, even if the funding was there, that we would continue to qualify. So the argument that this is important to get our Nantucket Harbor, Shimo area done, I agree wholeheartedly. But the logic behind what we're hearing would also augur to us also doing Nantucket and not delaying. So we're using an argument on both sides, and it's a little confusing, I think, to the folks in Nantucket. So we hope that, that this particular amendment is voted down, that the article as recommended is approved, but I've got some serious questions behind the logic of not including Nantucket.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on the amendment, is anyone wanting to speak in favor of the amendment? Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Bruce Miller. I think this amendment makes a great deal of sense. There are simply too many unanswered questions about this whole process for, I think, it to move ahead, largely based on emotion. I think it's true that, as Mr. DaCosta said, there are parts of the harbor that are dying. The problem is that those parts are going to get little or no benefit from this project. In fact, the parts of the harbor that are going to benefit from this project have already been improving. They're anticipated to improve further when the new jetty is installed. I believe, based on the most recent testing, they actually are above the state required mandates. So we're going to spend a lot of money to accomplish something that seems to be getting accomplished already, probably based on some of the prior efforts we've made with regard to treating stormwater runoff in the town area, which was a big problem, which we've largely corrected, improved enforcement of existing septic tank regulations has probably been a big contributor. And if the problem's in the upper harbor, I think we should be addressing solutions for the upper harbor. And what they are, I'm not sure, but I would rather invest the money in helping people up there install state-of-the-art septic tanks rather than sewering parts of the island where there will be no additional benefit. And with regard to the 0% financing, I think that's a really a dangerous trap we could fall into. I mean, if you go out and buy something that makes no sense simply because it's offering 0% financing, it doesn't mean it's a good acquisition. And that logic seems inescapable to me. So I think Ms. Wheatley has offered up a really sensible solution to allow us to move forward, demonstrate our commitment to sewering the places that need to be sewered, and allowing for considerable additional study on what the best additional steps should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DaCosta. Okay, so we're going to go to our town consultant. Then I know I have a man up here who has his hand up. So this is, if you could identify yourself, Ms. Blackier, so that everybody knows.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It's Rosemary Blackier from Woodard and Curran. We're the wastewater consultants for the town. First, I would like to just go back to the article itself, amending it, and what it would put in jeopardy. The state revolving fund has many criteria that you have to meet in order to get funded. And one is 85% of the developed properties have to be older than 1995. Nantucket Harbor Shimo does not qualify for that. So if these areas are separated, as the amendment asks, you will not be able to fund the Nantucket Harbor Shimo through the SRF at all, either at 0 or 2. So you'll lose SRF. The town asked us to look at being able to bundle areas to make them qualify for the SRF. That's the reason why the plus is put in with that.
What does SRF stand for again?
State Revolving Fund.
Okay, thank you.
So your state representative had passed, it's the first acts of Massachusetts in 2016, got the ability to pay that back in 30 years versus 20 years. There's a lot of benefits, 0%, as Brian said, just the interest alone. So if you separate these, anytime you move forward with Nantucket Harbor Shimo, you're going to have to finance that on your own. So that's the first thing. The second thing, in speaking to the last speaker, Nantucket Harbor is not meeting the thresholds required for the water body. The water quality results are declining every year, with the exception of one area in Nantucket. The science that was done for the harbor in order to reduce the nitrogen and meet the thresholds, you have 2 points to meet it at. One is in the upper harbor and one is in Pulpus Harbor. And in order to meet those thresholds, we looked at a whole scenario of things, fertilizer reduction, stormwater management. The jetties project came up. It is a combination of all of that. You cannot meet the thresholds without sewering. We had the scientists look at that again this week to see if there was any changes. To meet the thresholds in both the Upper Harbor and Pulpus Harbor, it requires the jetties reconstruction, which is being done on a grant, an $11 million grant. The town is not going to have to foot the bill for that. And then the sewering. The sewering with this area, Nantucket Harbor, Shimo, the way that the groundwater flows, in order for the jetties to have the clean flush, you have to reduce the load. And the way that it leaches into the harbor is it flows, and it flows upwards towards the upper harbor, and when the tides come in, it pull it out. If you do not reduce the nitrogen load from septics, you're not going to get the clean flush. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Yes, up in the front of the back section. Go ahead, stand up and identify yourself when you get the microphone. I think we're pretty close to taking a vote on this amendment. Oh, wait a minute. The microphone has to... Nope.
Try again?
Yep.
Yeah, my name's Steve Godwin. I'd like to support the amendment. Using data supplied by the town, the $41 million project, when implemented, will reduce the nitrogen load in the harbor by just 3 to 4% in the areas nearest the homes being sewered. The nitrogen measurements in this area are already below the target. We have a problem with high nitrogen levels in the head of the harbor and in Pulpus Harbor. I don't think this project will change these levels at all. In Pulpus Harbor, we should stop using nitrogen to fertilize the cranberry bog whose stream flows into Pulpus Harbor. If this means taking that bog out of production, then so be it. In Wauwinet, the town should open the head of the harbor to the ocean, at first temporarily, at the earliest opportunity. If this improved water quality in the head of the harbor, and perhaps in the west of that area, the town could then either open it regularly or engineer a culvert that would provide for steady water flow between the ocean and the head of the harbor. The town and other environmental agencies support the opening of Saskatchewan and hummock ponds on a regular basis. The head of the harbor is very much like these ponds and would benefit by fresh salt water and increased water flow. I like the metaphor about kicking the can down the road. I'm just going to refocus it in closing by saying we should kick the can down the road to the head of the harbor and Pulpus Harbor. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Dr. Mulcahy?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Matt Mulcahy, Finance Committee. I would like to thank a lady in the back of the room, Mrs. Allen, who spoke very eloquently and sums up, I believe, the Finance Committee's position on this. The Finance Committee does not support this amendment. It is, in her words, the right thing to do. These sewers may not affect each of us individually the same way. The Finance Committee looks at that project as a capital project, just like a new school, just like a new fire station, just like a new police station. It benefits us all. I don't need to talk to you about the environmental issues, but I will take issue that our consultant just spoke about how the nitrogen is a problem in the harbor. And I think that when hearing different views, I like to go with the experts. So and the committee is in the hands or listening to the consultants. We encourage you to vote for this amendment 100% as is now and at the ballot box. And in all due respect to Mrs. Wheatley, who I have much admire and respect on her work on the sewers, and Mr. Miller, but I am in a difference of opinion, and this committee is. Please vote for this.
You mean defeat the amendment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Please defeat the.
I wasn't going to let you go away without straightening that.
Well, it might be time for me to leave. I don't know. Yes, please defeat this amendment and vote for the motion as is printed. Thank you, and I'll try not to talk again.
Thank you. We're going to go to a vote on this, but first, Town Council wanted to say something, so I'm going to let him do that, and then we're going to go to a vote on Ms. Wheatley's amendment to Article 18. Okay, well, hang on. Let's let Mr. Giorgio have his say, and I can come up to you, Ms. Andrews, and then we can see where we go from there.
Madam Moderator, I would like to caution town meeting before voting on this amendment, because the ballot question, which is on the annual election ballot, has already been cast in stone, and that's a debt exclusion vote. And this, of course, appropriation is contingent upon passage of that question. That question includes both projects on the ballot. And while I'm not going to say that this amendment would necessarily jeopardize the outcome of that election, it will certainly has the potential to create voter confusion and potential opportunities to challenge the entire appropriation process. So you need to be careful about changing the Finance Committee's motion so that it does not mirror the ballot question that you'll be voting on shortly at the polls.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd just like to make a couple of points. The harbor is one body of water. It takes approximately, if I recall correctly, about 10 days to change that water as it comes in the jetty until it leaves. So if you can take nitrogen out of anywhere, we should do it. The other point regarding trying to somehow flush the upper harbor in a different matter, I just, for those of you who use the term haul over without recalling exactly where it comes from, there was a honkin' nor'easter sometime around 1911 maybe that opened up the upper harbor so that the flow went in both directions, and that has been filled in with sand since about that time. So if you try to change the tidal flow in the harbor, you're going to have to deal with the bear with me a sec. The reason it's closed is that the sand flowing up and down the littoral cell on the eastern shore fills it in. In other words, the sand comes from Sconset, it goes to Great Point, it comes from Great Point, it goes back to Sconset, and any gap in between there will fill in. This is why we have barrier beaches. So to try and propose that solution opens a whole can of worms with all the property owners on the eastern shore from Codfish Park through Quidnet, Wawinnet, and so on, because they'll be experiencing increasing erosion as that keeps trying to fill in. So I would urge the defeat of the amendment and the adoption of the article. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So on the amendment, we're just going to go to a vote. It requires a majority vote. A yes vote will adopt the amendment and will eliminate Nantucket Harbor Shimo from the main motion. A no vote will defeat the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no? No. That motion is not adopted. So now we're on the main motion on Article 18 as amended by Mr. Ray to change the allocation to 100% on the tax base. Is there any discussion, further discussion on the motion? As I see a lot of hands, I'll go to Mr. Glidden.
Just a couple points of clarification, if I may. I think it's really encouraging, Mrs. Allen spoke in the back about the fact that we're going to move forward in protecting our harbor. I want people to just understand when they're moving forward on this vote that this is sewering a very small portion of the septic. It's going to create some more hard surfaces that are going to add in runoff, which is part of the whole parcel of nitrogen that enters the harbor. And we as a community will most likely move forward and pass this article. What I would beg you to consider is that in the future, as we move forward in trying to deal with nitrogen and cleaning up the harbor and dealing with eelgrass, it's a very complicated issue, and we're spending a very large amount of money focusing on one part of it. $41 million is enough money that we could put forward some serious research into some ideas that could help us out. There are tight tanks. The state says we can't do it. I'm sure a lobbying firm for $10 million might be able to help out the state get us some tight tanks for those areas in Pulpus and so on. When we look at the fertilizer in the harbor, 20% of the nitrogen entering the harbor, according to the study that we had Water and Current complete, 24% of it comes from fertilizer. We are currently not going to spend any money on dealing with that 24% of fertilizer. So if you're going to vote for this, think financially prudently in the future about how do we deal with those other elements that are costing us a lot of money. So just some things to think about for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So, all right, yep, the gentleman right there, is that Mr. McIntyre, maybe? Hard to see. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Dual McIntyre, and I live at 2 Green Hollow Road in Tom Nevers. And I'd like to take a minute just to kind of talk a little bit about the problem of the excess nitrogen in the harbor and kind of straighten out some of the numbers. 77% of the nitrogen sources in the harbor are beyond our control. That leaves 23% that we can control. And of those 23%, 9% is due to impervious sources, stormwater runoff. 6% is due to fertilizer, or 24%, as Tobias Glidden indicated. That's 24% of the 23%. 8% is due to wastewater. The town has initiated a number of stormwater runoff projects, but there are still many that need to be done. The estimated costs on the town website for these projects are out of date, but the best guess is about $26.5 million. And a very important point, drainage system improvements qualify for this Clean Water State Revolving Fund, the 0% that we're talking about. As a matter of fact, several towns, Marion, Lowell, and Fall River, have already received approval for stormwater projects. So that area is open to us. As other people have indicated, Wauwinet and Pulpus are the problem areas. 3 streams entering Pulpus Harbor have the highest concentration of nitrogen. Fertilizers. The best management practices for landscape fertilizers was a great article that was approved a couple of years ago. The problem is that it is not enforced. Compliance is largely voluntary. What we need is some dedicated resources to monitor and enforce the regulations to control the fertilizer. The wastewater, the final source of nitrogen, represents 8% of the sources of the nitrogen in Nantucket Harbor. Article 18 will eliminate 325 septic systems in the Harbor Shimo area, which is roughly half of the septic systems that exist around the harbor. The rest of them will not be affected at all, nor will they be.
Could wrap up, please.
I will, thank you. One final quote, and I will quote this. It's from page 28 of the latest report for DEP. Quote, "The main basin of Nantucket Harbor is supporting high-quality waters." I urge you to defeat this article so that we can bring it back again at a special town meeting when we would hope the town would address both the stormwater and the fertilizer as well as the sewer question. Thank you.
Thank you. The woman up behind. Okay, I'll come back to Roberto. We'll go up to this woman.
Hi, I just want to say that our island is supposed to be unique. We're supposed to be really special, really different. We're called the Rock. We're called off island is America. We are the island. I don't understand why we need fertilized lawns. Why can't we just mow what we have and allow no fertilizer?
No clapping, please.
And that would help a lot, I think. So that's my thought. Get rid of green grass. Use green moss.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Roberto Santamaria?
Yes, Roberto Santamaria, Department of Public Health. To answer some of the quotes from the previous two speakers, the Board of Health has passed regulations for fertilizer, and we are working on fertilizer enforcement. There is a fertilizer advisory committee that has been advertised and we've asked many people to join. And if we're all talking about this as an island-wide problem, well, only 4 people applied. So we're having our first meeting of the Fertilizer Advisory Committee on April 11th, and I urge people to show up if they really feel that fertilizer is a problem. We are stepping up enforcement. The town has put up funds to apply for 2 people, so we can have 2 people enforcing fertilizer this summer. Let us keep working on this so that we can address the fertilizer as a comprehensive part of this greater article. Everything working together is where we'd be able to help the harbor. I was speaking to general people yesterday, and I was speaking to Woodward and Curran yesterday, where the harbor, the flushing comes in from this area. If we prevent these things from coming into the Monomoy, Shimo area, that's clean water going up to the head of the harbor into Pulpus Harbor and helping with that clean. So yes, the quote that Mr. McIntyre said, that it is contributing to good quality, of course, because the water is coming in from the sound at that area into the harbor and into the Pulpus area. The other part that people don't necessarily realize, we've been talking a lot about nitrogen, 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 and nitrogen. Well, it's not all nitrogen. Sewer also stops aldehydes, which are disinfectants, chlorine from pool water, surfactants from laundry detergent, antibiotics. It stops all of this from entering our groundwater. This is a systemic way to fix all the nutrient issues in the harbor. I urge you to pass this article as written. It is important for everyone on the island.
Okay, so Mr. Drake?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Dan Drake. I'm the president of the Nantucket Shellfish Association. I'd like to echo the comments that Mr. DaCosta made earlier. I think if you look at the fact that the scallop catch 35 years ago was almost 100,000 bushels. Now it's down to 3 or 4, maybe 5,000 bushels a year. That's indicative of the health of the harbor. The Monomoy Shimo area has been one of the favorite areas for individuals during family season in October. This year there weren't any scallops out there. All of this is essential. We all agree that that these are steps at the margin, whether it be sewerage, whether it be wastewater, whether it be dealing with the fertilizer problem. All of them together are required, as has been pointed out, to solve the problem. The Board of Directors of the Shellfish Association has asked me to plead for your vote in favor of this article and to also ask you to keep the pressure on, if you will, on both the fertilizer and the wastewater issues. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Okay, I think you're probably ready to vote on the main motion on Article 18. Yes, okay. So what you're voting on is the motion of the Finance Committee as printed in the warrant with the amendment made by Mr. Ray. A yes vote will adopt this motion. A no vote will defeat the motion. It does require a majority vote. Oh no, it requires a 2/3 vote, excuse me. So a yes vote will adopt the motion. A no vote will defeat the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. I declare a 2/3 vote was met, and the motion on Article 18 is made by the Finance Committee and amended by Mr. Ray is adopted. So, we will now go to Article 27. Article 27 is on page 44 of the warrant. The Finance Committee motion is moved that $500,000 be appropriated from the FY 2017 tax levy and other general revenues of the town to be deposited by the treasurer into the other post-employment benefits trust fund. Is that your motion?
So moved, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Is there a second? Motion is made and seconded. Mr. Sperry, you called this, so I think I'll let you go.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My name is Craig Sperry. I live on Cato Lane. It's my privilege to serve on the Finance Committee, although I'm speaking as a private citizen. This article is regarding the OPEB, also known as Other Post-Employment Benefits. I stood up here 3 years ago to go over the same thing, and I think it's helpful to attach numbers to what we're voting for. On the face of it, we're voting $500,000 to go into this fund. The overall amount that's unfunded is $88 million, which is a little more than it was when I stood up 3 years ago. There's another way to approach this problem. The Board of Selectmen has hired a healthcare consultant, Ed Burns. He's presented 2 workshops, one on July 8th, one on December 9th of 2015. It's also available on the town's video-on-demand system if you'd like to review it. He said, and I think these are some important points, that it's important that HMOs are offered to town employees. At this point, there are no HMOs on Nantucket. One of his quotes was, "A vast majority of Massachusetts communities offer HMOs. Other towns, other municipalities offer HMOs. They cost less, yet offer the same plan design as PPOs. PPOs are preferred provider organizations. That's one of the plans that is currently offered by the town. It's also important to know that 97% of Nantucket physicians accept HMOs. There's also a concern for town retirees that if they move off island, let's say they move to Florida, that they be offered an indemnity plan. HMOs do not offer, they don't meet that qualification. The town would offer an indemnity plan to meet that qualification. Another important point is, and this was made by the consultant, there's a thing called the Cadillac tax. It's all part of the Affordable Care Act, and it'll go into effect starting in 2018, and it's basically a tax on the existing plans that we have. First year, they predict an $800,000 penalty for the Cadillac tax. The HMOs are not affected by the Cadillac tax. So my plea, my appeal is to town employees, tell your union representatives that you should be able to have HMOs available, and then sign up for them once they're available. So I thank you, and let's see if that we can get some buy-in on this, because it's very important. These are huge numbers, and here's a way that we can bring those numbers down. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on Article 27? Seeing not, this requires a majority vote. A yes vote will adopt the motion. A no vote will defeat the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, say no. That is adopted by a majority voice vote. Okay. So Article 28, which is on page 44, continues to page 45. Ask for your unanimous consent to waive the reading of that motion. It is as printed in the warrant. Recognize Mr. Kelly for the purpose of making the Finance Committee's motion.
So moved, Madam Moderator.
Is there a second? Motion is made and seconded. Mr. Sperry, you called this as well? And I gave you a little leeway on that last article. I think we sort of strayed outside the scope. So if we could stick to the scope on this one.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This regards the contract, pardon me, for the Deputy Police Chief. Again, it's in the interest of transparency, I suppose, that this contract is already a year into its 3-year term. There is a movement by the town to move managers out of union contracts and into non-union contracts. Last year, 2 of the sewer solid waste treatment managers did this. They opted out of the unions and they are now non-union. The new position for the visitor services head will be a non-union position. That's a change from what it used to be. And I think there's another one, I can't remember what it is right now. I would ask that whether it's Human Resources or the Board of Selectmen, to start the work now to transfer this position to a non-union contract when the time comes up in 2 years. There are some issues with this contract. There's a serious issue of conflict of interest issues regarding negotiating the contract. It's a union of 1, which is a little unusual. Other unions look to this contract for parity. Parity means those other unions want the same thing this contract got, and it puts negotiations in a difficult position by the way this is set up. Again, I would ask that the Board of Selectmen and the Human Resources Department work to change this situation and make this into a non-union position. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else on this? Okay, this requires, yes, Mr. Williams.
I would like to echo what Craig Sperry said, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to look at this contract and try to get out of the union protection as a result of the expanding responsibilities of the deputy chief, now that we've taken on the harbor responsibilities and different things, that we could use that to our advantage to relook at this whole contract and rethink it. So I would like you to vote no on this article.
Thank you. Anything else on this article? Mr. Atherton.
Yes, just for the record on this article, the Board of Selectmen voted 3, 4, and 2 against recommending the approval of this contract. And part of that decision-making, at least on my part, I was one of the 2, was that this is a management position. And if we're capable as a town of negotiating a decision with our unions on other management positions, and I think incidentally that benefits both the union and the town, that's not a one-way street, to take managerial positions out of the union contracts, we certainly ought to be able to do that with a union of 1. And one way to get that underway is to vote no on the article. Nothing really happens here except negotiations would continue and hopefully come to a better solution. Note the salary in the article. I think it's clear the salary is, I would call it a red circle item. It's higher than one would think is appropriate for the job description. Thank you.
Okay, on the oops.
I should clarify, and thank you, Council. I'm speaking as a private citizen. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Board of Selectmen in any way in the comments I just made about the article. Thank you.
Thank you. On the article, Ms. Benz?
Thank you. I have a question about whether or not this position is involved in making decisions about grievances that are placed or submitted by union members, in which case there would clearly be a conflict of interest.
I'm going to recognize the new HR director If you could identify yourself.
Sure, thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Steve Tuzik, Director of Human Resources for the town. There's no conflict of interest with regard to grievances, nothing to do with that aspect of the role. That's strictly between the police chief and myself, and we would facilitate whatever was required.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
I'm a little confused about what we're voting on here. Are we looking for appropriating the money for a contract that's already been negotiated and agreed upon? Or are we trying to take a body out of the union position and put him into a non-union position?
Mr. Tuzik?
The contract's in full force and effect, and it has been since July 1st of 2015. We need to provide a 4-month notice period if we want to open up the contract for renegotiation. To the comment about bringing positions where applicable from management union positions to non-union, we're actively trying to facilitate that when the opportunities arise. It's not as easy as individuals would think. Because you open yourself up to bargaining and so forth, and it's very significant. We cannot just, it's not in the interests of the town to go to a union and say, we'd like this position to be out of the union, this management position, because it would open us up to negotiations of medical benefits and wage and many other benefits. So it's not that easy, I can assure you, and we've done so very successfully in the past 7 months. When the opportunity arises, we'll take a position out of the union, and it'll be an exempt administrative position.
I'm familiar with the concept. I'm the representative for the educational support personnel in the union at the school, and we just finished a negotiation for our contract. But my question is, what are we voting on here? Is this the money for a contract that's already been agreed upon, or are we discussing the procedure to remove, to negotiate removal of this position?
You're correct. It's just the funding, the appropriation.
For a contract that's already agreed on?
Correct.
Point of order. Mr. Drake? Okay, wait for a microphone.
I'm sorry, Dan Drake, why is this appropriation not included in the general fund operating budget if it's funding a contract that was signed last year?
Mr. Giorgio, don't we normally have collective bargaining agreement compensation in these separate articles?
Yes, Madam Moderator, this is a little bit of an unusual situation. Town meeting actually has to approve the economic terms of a collective bargaining agreement, and typically that's done in a separate warrant article before the contract goes into effect. In this case, there's been a year's delay, however, so it is a separate article in order for town meeting to understand what the economic terms of that contract are. Next year, this appropriation to fund the third year of this agreement will be in the police department budget in, I think it's Article 8.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Mr. McClure. Wait for this microphone. Are you going to ask what's the effect if we vote this down? Mr. Giorgio, if you could let us know what the effect is.
Yes, so this is the appropriation to fund the contract. There's already exists a legal obligation of town meeting to fund the second year of a 3-year contract. So we would probably, if this were voted down, I'm sure that there would be both potentially an unfair labor practice claim and potentially a contract claim if the position is not funded in the second year of the contract.
Okay. All right. Yes, if you could stand up and we'll get you a microphone. You're right next to you.
Victoria Pickwick, I still don't know whether to vote yes or no and what the repercussions will be.
Okay. All right. Mr. Giorgio?
Madam Moderator, if town meeting were to vote on this, there would be no appropriation to pay the deputy chief in fiscal 2017, and that would give rise to contract claims against the town and potentially unfair bargaining claims, because as I indicated earlier, this contract was funded in 2016. It's therefore in full force and effect, and it's a legal obligation of the town to fund the contract in the second year.
Okay. So in other words, if you don't vote for this motion, we potentially face contract claims and breach of contract, et cetera. Mr. Ross?
Yes, Madam Moderator. I was just wondering, we're talking about one person that's in one union?
Correct.
Okay. Maybe a little background would be great as to why. I'm assuming all other town employees, all other police officers, if we're talking about this, are they all in the same union?
No.
Except for this one particular position?
I'm going to let somebody explain the union situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, this is a single employee in this union. It's a bit of an anomaly, but that's the way it's existed, I believe, since 1994, if I'm not mistaken. This has been a single employee union for that period of time. As your HR director indicated in his remarks, the bargaining team is working towards trying to essentially fix this anomaly. Whether or not that means the union position becomes management, again, that's going to create all sorts of bargaining obligations on the part of the town with respect to the union. So it's going to be a difficult process, but as this contract expires in 2018, I'm sure there will be some significant collective bargaining negotiations to determine how this position will be classified after 2018.
Can you explain how there are other unions in the town? Just because I don't think people even really understand that part of it.
In the police department? There's 13 unions total in the town. There's 3 in the police department alone.
Okay. Chief Pittman, so 13 unions in the town, 3 in the police department alone.
Bill Pittman, the police chief. And I think I need to clarify one thing is a few years ago, we did negotiate with this union, and this position will be out of the union when the incumbent employee retires. We've already made that agreement with the Laborers Union International. So he's only there until ultimately he retires from his position, which, I don't know, that's a choice he makes in the future. So at that point, this will become a non-union position if we still even have a deputy chief, or we may have some different options in place at that time. But his was one of the very first ones that we went to him and tried to get removed from the union years ago. And that's kind of a pretty common tactic that you use in labor relations is you try to negotiate the position for when the incumbent is beyond the incumbent. That way you can get the changes you need. So that decision has already been made. We've already negotiated that, and it will be non-union when the incumbent retires ultimately.
Okay. So there's more on this? Okay. What does he want? Mr. Tuzik, do you recommend adoption of this article? Absolutely recommends adoption of the article. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Franzuto, you have someone back there? Dr. Butterworth?
George Butterworth. I just had a point of information. Is this all salary for one person, or is this salary plus benefits included in that?
Mr. Tuzik?
Salary plus benefits.
Thank you. Yes, we're just going to go to a vote on this. The motion on Article 28 is as printed in the warrant. A yes vote will adopt the motion. A no vote will defeat the motion. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. That is passed by a majority voice vote. Okay, I think we can do one more article and then break for lunch. We're going to do Article 32. Article 32 appears on page 53. It received a move not to adopt motion from the Finance Committee. The proponent, Mr. Williams, has provided us with a motion, which is shown on the screen. Move that the town appropriate and also, no, we can't. We can't do it. We can't do this motion. Okay, you know what? Why don't we break for lunch? We'll fix this motion, and then when we come back, this is what we will start with. So, how long do you want? You want to come back at 1 or 1:15? Okay, somebody said 12:30, but I think you probably need more than a half an hour, right? Okay, 1 o'clock prompt.